Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. Here's the processes you'll need to know if you attempt to do this on your own as a DIY, or even if you have done this before and you just want to get better at it and see the easiest and fastest way to do things, then you'll want to pay attention to this. So basically, I've got some lumber and I hand selected the lumber off my rack. I got the straightest pieces, the pieces that were the right length. That way I wouldn't have to do a lot of cutting or extending any of the pieces. So this is a 12 by 20. Like I was saying, I've got hand selected all the wood, the right lengths that I needed off the truck, and the straightest stuff. That way I can get it in here as quick as possible. The first form we set, we just ran a line all the way down the side of the house so that the furthest away form is straight with the side of the house. So when the shed goes on here, it'll be lined up with the side of the house. And then on my second form nearest to the house, parallel with the house, we just measured off 6 feet at both ends. So if we're straight on one side and parallel with the other, that technically should be square if the house is square. But we didn't rely 100%. We double checked it. The way I did that, I did a 6, 8, 10. I do 6 on one side, 8 on the other, and 10 diagonally. We did burn a foot on the measuring tape, that way you could get a good hand grip on it. And if the end of your tapes are a little loose, which happens a lot of times, you could lose an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch. That's another reason to burn a foot. You got some good hard numbers to go off of. So that's what we did here. We triangulated the corners, and then we also went diagonal all the way across. Just another way to double check yourself. After we did all that, we used a minimal amount of upright stakes and no kickers to speak of, since the lumber was straight. All right. Well, we've been here 1 hour and 20 minutes, and this is ready. Well, actually, we still got to put the wire in, but we dropped the wire. This thing's ready, hour and 20 minutes. Beautiful. This is a one-dayer if you really want to do, but, you know, I'm not in a hurry. And it gives me a reason to get out of the house every day when you do them like I do. I have a 12-foot screed there, as you can see, and I could have just put that 12-foot screed and used it as a template to set both sides parallel to each other. Could have done that also. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but as long as it's good in the end, that's all that really matters. Here's the wire mesh. I got a roll here from Home Depot. We just rolled it out in an easy area where we have a lot of space to roll it and then flip it. That way we can flatten it out. Because it has a tendency, even though you unroll it, it has a tendency to want to roll back on itself. So we flip it really quickly and then pound it down and get it laid out flat. All right, we just arrived at the job site about 6 a.m. in the morning. Concrete should be here in about 30 minutes. We're doing this little 12 by 20 right here. It's going to be a shed pad. We are pumping it. We could have possibly wheelbarrowed this, but it's loose gravel, and it's very difficult to wheel through loose gravel. You almost have to ramp it to wheel it. So versus labor and pump, it's just economically, it makes more sense to pump it. So that's what we're doing here. Here's S&S Materials, bringing the concrete up. And I've got 2 3/4 of a yard. It figures 2.4 yards at 4 inches deep. I've got 2 3/4. I could have made it on 2.5, but since I'm running it through a hose, I might have ran out of concrete, and then I would have had to push out the remaining what was in the hopper and hose to make it work. So instead of going to that much trouble, I just threw an extra 1/4 yard on there. So that's something you may want to consider, is your length of hose and what's in the hopper in order to push it all the way out. Sometimes you'll have to fill your hopper with water just to get what you need out of there into the hole. It came out stiff, way too stiff initially. I told Julio here, the pumper, I like it as stiff as you can run it through that hose. So he gave it to me stiff, all right, and actually it was too stiff for me. You can see that it's like dry stacking. That's a sign of a good pump, if you can push that through. So we added water, needless to say, and then it started coming out a lot nicer. There's no fiber mesh in this. Typically, I put fiber mesh in a lot of the stuff I do out here, but now that the weather is cooling down and this is a very small area, I didn't think that the fiber mesh was going to be a real necessity here, so I just laid a double mat of welded wire mesh. The reason it's a double mat of welded wire mesh is because I didn't want to bring the excess back to the yard, so I just threw it all into the job site. I do that quite often, even if I'm doing rebar or whatever it might be. If I've got extra, it's just going to go in the hole. It's just a bonus, basically. So here's where we ran out. I like to get it right on the money on all my pours because I don't really like to haul spoils away or try to discard them. This way, whatever's left in the truck or pump can go back to the plant. They can recycle it, and then it can be made of use somewhere else. And I did oil this form. It was pitch black dark when I started spraying the oil, so I don't know if I really showed that very well. But I just put it in my little 1 gallon pump up sprayer, specifically designed form oil for concrete form work. I did use motor oil for quite some time, but it's a little too thick to come out of the sprayer, so you got to dilute it with diesel fuel. So you've got a lot of different things going on. Now I just go ahead and get the 5 gallons of form oil. It's pretty inexpensive anyway. Here's some wire. See what happens when you've got a double mat of rebar or wire mesh in there? You get it coming up here and there at the surface. The good news, you know it's in there when you see that happening. We're not really concerned with rust a whole lot out here because it's pretty dry. So steel really holds up well. So as he's bowl floating it, especially when he was bowl floating perpendicular to the way we screeded it, that's the most crucial to really kind of flatten it out. That's when you want to do your back splatter, like fill in the voids that the bowl flip misses. Here's your joint layout, and it's just going to be one each direction. So basically, we're going to have 6 by 10. Oh, you know what? It was 6 by 8. This is actually 16 feet by 12 feet. This pad. Yeah, I just remembered the square dimensions now, so now I remembered the entire dimension, which is 16 by 12. This joiner right here is your Arizona. It's a little bit wider joint. The radius is pretty much the same as the California joiner. It's just a wider gap, which is nice. This thing is great for beginners. If a DIY guy wanted a walk-in joiner, this is the one you'd want to get. Stays in the groove real nice. Even when it gets hard, it's easy to work the joints with it. Like for instance, we're not going to really use any hand tools on this job. Very minimal, if any. Just walking edgers, walking joiners, funny trowels, bowl floats, all the easy stuff to use. See there, we just hit it with the funny float to start with. Now going back over it with the funny trowel. Then I decided, well, I carried this big blue all the way out of my truck from the street to the backyard. I think I want to use it instead of just walking back and forth with the thing from truck to backyard without getting it dirty. So I put it on the concrete, knocked some rust off of it. And this thing's nice because what it does, it helps flatten it out as well. It's pretty heavy and it's wide, so you can kind of get it flat with that as well. Here's another run with the walking joiner. And we're just going to keep doing this, is just keep hitting it with walkers until it's ready to broom. You could leave a smooth finish on this if you wanted to, but the homeowner wanted a broom. And it's going to have a shed on it, inevitably, but what if the shed was to be moved? Maybe someone wanted to put a jacuzzi on it instead. So you do want some texture, so you have those options. So you notice how I just ran the joiner, opened up those joints. And now I'm just going to touch up everything one more time with this funny trowel. Also, because of the form oil that I put on here, I'll be able to strip this down, backfill it with the gravel, and complete this, not look back. This is a little 10-inch wide, half-inch radius walking edger. Notice how the joint's running, but it's not leaving lines on both sides of the joiner. That's really good news. That means you don't really have to funny trowel it again. You could just go ahead and broom it right behind your joiner. You're not going to have some lines that your joiner left, because this particular joiner doesn't leave them like a lot of joiners would. Here's the extent of the handwork. I think something had fallen on this edge, so I had to do a little touch up. Here's the forms coming off. Doug's working on that, and the way he's doing, he's pulling the gravel back first. That way the forms just fall off. Instead of having to lift the form up and possibly pulling up the edge of the fresh concrete with it, you have a little bit more luck doing it this way. Although we did have one area that peeled right there, see it? And I'm pulling off what stuck to the form. It's going to slap it back in there and then re-edge it. So there's kind of your extent of your handwork. Superficial stuff that came up. If I had fiber mesh in this mix, when I pulled those forms, that might have not pulled up with it. So that's some of the benefits of fiber. All right, we're at 9:15 in the morning. We started pouring about 6:37, and I'm breaking out the broom. No knee boards, no handwork, all walking tools. This thing is looking good. Look at that finish, getting an idea what you can do with the funny trowel and walking tools. Gonna about wrap it up, but I do want to show you the end detail after the broom. Because it's so small, I just one-wayed the broom. I set it out in the middle at the joint and pulled it back. That gave me my texture. See, these first two sections are finished, and I'm waiting on that shaded area. So while I was waiting for the shaded area to dry out a little bit more before I broomed it, I just went ahead and started pushing the gravel back in very carefully along the edge. It wouldn't have mattered a whole lot if some gravel landed on top of it, because it could be just brushed off the next day. But I was careful enough to put that gravel back without getting any excess on top of it. You notice how you can still see the color of the sealer? That's for a reason. That way you know where you've sprayed and where you haven't. But it will all dry clear. Here's the product I use. Really good stuff. Dries clear. I mean, they have some of these brands that just stay white forever, and you got to pressure wash to get off, but this stuff dries clear, and it kind of dissipates after a few months, but it gets you through the curing process. Here she is. She turned out beautiful. So if you like these kind of videos, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day, and thanks for watching.